Before I share my story, let me ask you, what would you do if the people you loved most laughed at you for not keeping up, only to discover you'd been holding them together all along? I thought I was just showing up for another family reunion, wearing the only dress I could afford. But the day my cousins and siblings laughed at my old clothes, I realized I'd spent years letting them judge me without ever knowing the truth. This isn't just a story about pride or appearances. It's about the moment you decide to stop shrinking for someone else's comfort and the quiet power of generosity that doesn't need to be seen. So settle in, and if you've ever wondered what you'd do in my shoes, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened next changed not just my family, but the way I see myself forever. The day my family laughed at my old dress at the reunion, I realized I'd spent my whole life letting them see only what they wanted to see. It started with a letter. Not an email, not a text, but a real letter, thick paper, careful handwriting, the kind of thing you save in a drawer for years. My cousin Linda was organizing the family reunion this year, and she wanted everyone to know it. The letter was full of exclamation points and underlined words. Biggest reunion ever. Dress to impress. Let's make memories. I smiled as I read it, picturing Linda in her kitchen, her hair perfectly styled, her phone pressed to her ear as she coordinated caterers and photographers and matching t-shirts. She'd always been the star of the family, first to get married, first to buy a house, first to post every milestone on Facebook. I was happy for her, truly. But sometimes, her enthusiasm made me feel like I was still the little girl in hand-me-downs, trying to keep up. I looked at the date on the invitation, then at my bank statement. Money was tight, as always. After Tom died, I'd gone back to work at the library, picking up extra shifts, clipping coupons, making every dollar stretch. I didn't mind. I liked the work, the quiet order of books, the way the children's laughter echoed through the stacks. But there wasn't much left over for new clothes or fancy dinners. I opened my closet, running my hands over the dresses hanging there. Most were years old, faded from too many washes, the hems let down and taken up again. I found the blue one, the one I'd worn to Tom's retirement party, to Grace's graduation, to every family gathering for the last 5 years. It was soft and comfortable, the color a little dull, the fabric worn thin at the elbows. But it was clean, and it fit, and it made me feel like myself. The day of the reunion dawned bright and hot. I packed a casserole for the potluck, wrapped a small gift for Linda, and put on the blue dress. I pinned on my mother's brooch, the one she'd worn to every family event, and slipped on my old sandals. I looked in the mirror, smoothing my hair, telling myself it was enough. The park was already crowded when I arrived. Tents and tables were set up under the trees, balloons tied to every post, the smell of barbecue and sunscreen thick in the air. Children ran through the grass, their laughter ringing out over the music from the speakers. I spotted Linda at the registration table, her dress bright and new, her smile wide. "Anna, you made it," she called, hugging me tight. "You look comfortable." I smiled, ignoring the way her eyes lingered on my dress. "Thank you, Linda. It's good to see you." I made my way through the crowd, greeting cousins and aunts and uncles, accepting hugs and compliments, trying to ignore the whispers and glances that followed me. I heard someone laugh, she wearing that old thing again, and felt my cheeks burn. I kept my head high, my smile steady, my heart pounding. At lunch, I sat at a table with Ruth, my sister, and a few of the older cousins. We talked about the past, about the family farm, about the way things used to be. I listened, offering stories and laughter, but I could feel the distance between us. The way they looked at my dress, the way they talked about their vacations and new cars and kitchen remodels. After lunch, Linda gathered everyone for a group photo. She stood in the center, her arm around her husband, her children lined up in matching outfits. I stood at the edge, my blue dress blending into the background, my smile tight. As the photographer snapped the picture, I heard someone whisper, "At least she's consistent, always the same dress." The group burst into laughter, the sound sharp and cold. I stood there, my heart pounding, my hands clenched at my sides. And I realized then that I'd spent my whole life letting them see only what they wanted to see. If you've ever felt judged for not keeping up, or if you want to see what happens when a woman finally claims her worth, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what's the most hurtful thing someone said about your appearance? How did you find your way back to yourself? I read every story, and you never know who you might help by sharing. After the photo, I slipped away from the crowd, my cheeks burning, my hands shaking. I found a quiet spot under an old oak tree, the shade cool and comforting. I watched my family from a distance, Linda holding court at the picnic tables, my cousins comparing vacation photos on their phones, the children running wild through the grass. I felt like a ghost, invisible in a sea of people who shared my name but not my story. I thought about Tom, about the way he used to squeeze my hand when I felt out of place, about the way he'd whisper, "You're the best thing in this room, Anna. Don't let them make you forget it." I missed him more than I could say. I missed the way he saw me, the way he made me feel like I belonged. I tried to remind myself that I was enough, that my worth wasn't measured by the price of my dress or the shine of my shoes. But the laughter from the picnic tables echoed in my ears, sharp and cruel. Ruth found me under the tree, her face full of concern. "Don't let them get to you, Anna," she said, sitting beside me. "You're the heart of this family, they just don't see it." I smiled, blinking back tears. "It's hard, Ruth. I feel like I'm always on the outside looking in." She squeezed my hand. "You're not alone, I see you. Sophie sees you, and I know Tom would be so proud of you." I nodded, grateful for her kindness, for her steady presence in a world that felt unsteady. As the afternoon wore on, I tried to rejoin the festivities. I helped serve dessert, refilled drinks, wiped sticky faces, and tied shoelaces. I listened to stories about new jobs, new houses, new bobbies. I smiled and nodded, but I felt the distance between us growing with every passing hour. At one point, Linda pulled me aside, her voice low. "Anna, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but maybe next year you could treat yourself to something new. You deserve it." I forced a smile, my heart aching. "Thank you, Linda, I'll think about it." She patted my arm, her eyes full of pity. "You're always so practical, but sometimes it's okay to want more." I nodded, biting back the words I wanted to say. I wanted to tell her that I did want more kindness, more understanding, more respect. But I knew she wouldn't hear me. After dessert, the children put on a little play they rehearsed in secret. Sophie played the princess, her dress made from an old sheet, a crown of wildflowers on her head. She looked for me in the crowd, her eyes shining, her smile wide. "Grandma, come sit in the front," she called, waving me over. I hesitated, then made my way to the front row, the laughter and whispers following me. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, my heart pounding. Sophie's play was simple but full of joy. She danced and sang, her voice clear and sweet. At the end, she ran to me, throwing her arms around my neck. "You're my favorite, Grandma," she whispered. "Thank you for always being here." I hugged her tight, my tears falling freely. That night, as I walked home under the stars, I realized that sometimes the people who see us best are the ones we least expect. And sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let yourself be erased. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or if you want to see what happens when a woman finally claims her place, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, how do you keep showing up for the people you love, even when it hurts? I read every story, and you never know who you might help by sharing. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain tapping against the window and the distant laughter of children playing in the street. I made myself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and tried to shake off the ache in my chest. I thought about the reunion, about the way my family had laughed at my dress, about the way Linda had patted my arm and told me I deserved more. I wondered if they'd ever see me for who I really was, or if I'd always be the practical one, the helper, the woman in the faded blue dress. I tried to keep busy, cleaning the house, tending the garden, calling Ruth for a long chat about nothing and everything. But the hurt lingered, a bruise that wouldn't fade. A few days later, I stopped by the post office to pick up a package. The clerk, Mrs. Miller, greeted me with a smile. "Anna, I saw you at the reunion. You looked lovely. That blue dress suits you. I smiled, surprised by her kindness. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. It's an old favorite. She leaned in, her voice low. Don't let them get to you, Anna. Some people only see what's on the surface, but the rest of us know what really matters. I thanked her words warming me more than the tea I'd had that morning. That afternoon, I went for a walk through the village. The air was fresh after the rain, the sky a patchwork of clouds and sunlight. I passed the bakery, the church, the little park where Tom and I used to sit on Sunday afternoons. I thought about the life we'd built, the memories we'd made, the love that had carried me through every storm. As I walked, I noticed Linda's car parked outside the community center. I saw her through the window, talking to the event organizer, her hands waving as she spoke. I wondered what they were discussing, what plans she was making, what stories she was telling. I felt a flicker of suspicion, a sense that something was happening just out of sight. That evening, Ruth called, her voice full of excitement. Anna, have you heard? The organizer is making a big announcement at the next family dinner. Something about the reunion, about who paid for everything. I frowned, my heart pounding. I thought Linda organized the whole thing. She sent the invitations, hired the caterer, booked the photographer. Ruth laughed. That's what everyone thought, but apparently there's more to the story. I felt a surge of curiosity, of hope, of fear. I wondered what the announcement would be, what secrets would come to light, what truths would finally be revealed. That night I sat on the porch, the stars bright above me, the air cool and sweet. I thought about the reunion, about the laughter and the whispers, about the way my family had judged me without knowing the truth. I realized then that sometimes, the things we hide are the things that matter most. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting the truth speak for itself. If you've ever felt like your story was being told by someone else, or if you want to see what happens when a woman's quiet strength is finally recognized, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever kept a secret that changed everything? I read every story, and you never know who you might help by sharing. The day of the family dinner arrived with a heavy sky and a restless wind. I spent the morning baking a pie apple, Tom's favorite, rolling out the dough with practiced hands, letting the scent of cinnamon and sugar fill the kitchen. I chose my blue dress again, smoothing the fabric, pinning on my mother's brooch. I told myself it was enough, that I was enough, that I didn't need anyone's approval to feel at home in my own skin. Ruth picked me up, her car full of laughter and the smell of fresh bread. We drove to Linda's house, the conversation easy, the silence comfortable. I could feel the tension building as we pulled into the driveway, the house already full of cars, the windows glowing with light. Inside, the family was gathered around the table, the air thick with the smell of roast chicken and the sound of overlapping voices. Linda greeted us at the door, her smile wide, her eyes bright. Anna, Ruth, so glad you could make it. Come in, come in. I smiled, hugging her, trying to ignore the way her eyes lingered on my dress, the way she whispered something to her husband as we walked by. Dinner was a blur of conversation and laughter, of stories and memories, of old jokes and new gossip. I listened, offering smiles and encouragement, but I felt the distance between us growing with every passing hour. I watched as Linda held court at the head of the table, her voice ringing out, her stories full of herself. After dinner, as we cleared the table, I overheard Linda talking to the organizer, her voice low and urgent. Are you sure you want to make the announcement tonight? I mean, does it really matter who paid for the reunion? The organizer, Mrs. Patel, smiled, her eyes kind. I think it does, Linda. People should know the truth. Linda's face tightened, her lips pressed into a thin line. Well, if you think it's necessary. As dessert was served, Mrs. Patel stood at the end of the table, tapping her glass for attention. Before we finish, I have a little announcement to make, she said, her voice clear and steady. I want to thank everyone for coming to the reunion, for making it such a special day, but there's something you all should know. She paused, her eyes scanning the room, lingering on me. This year's reunion was paid for by someone who wanted to remain anonymous. Someone who has always put this family first, who has given more than anyone realizes, who has been the quiet heart of our gatherings for years. She turned to me, her smile warm. Anna, thank you for your generosity. Thank you for making this reunion possible. The room went silent. All eyes turned to me, surprise and shock written on every face. Linda's mouth fell open, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Ruth beamed, her eyes shining with pride. I felt a wave of relief, of vindication, of quiet joy. Mark stood, his voice trembling. Mom, you paid for the reunion. Why didn't you say anything? I smiled, my voice gentle. Because I didn't do it for the recognition, Mark. I did it for the family, for Sophie, for all of us. Linda looked down, her face red. I'm sorry, Anna, I didn't know. I nodded, my heart full. It's all right, Linda, now you do. That night, as I walked home under the stars, I realized that sometimes the things we do in secret are the things that matter most. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting your actions speak for themselves. If you've ever been surprised by the truth coming out, or if you want to see what happens when a woman's quiet strength is finally recognized, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, has your kindness ever gone unnoticed until the right moment? I read every story, and you never know who you might help by sharing. After Mrs. Patel's announcement, the room was thick with silence. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, some full of surprise, some with a new kind of respect, a few with shame. Linda busied herself clearing plates, her cheeks still flushed, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. Ruth squeezed my hand under the table, her eyes shining with pride. You did it, Anna. You showed them who you are. I smiled, my heart full. I didn't do it to prove anything, Ruth. I just wanted everyone to be together. She nodded, her voice soft. That's what makes you special. As the evening wore on, people came up to thank me. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunts and uncles who'd always seemed distant, even Linda's husband, who shook my hand and said, We never would have pulled this off without you, Anna. Mark found me in the kitchen, his face serious. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have asked. I should have seen how much you do for all of us. I hugged him, my voice gentle. It's all right, Mark. Sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us until someone points it out. He nodded, tears in his eyes. Thank you for everything, Mom. For the reunion, for Sophie, for always being there. Jenna approached me later, her voice quiet. I'm sorry, Anna. I know I haven't always made you feel welcome. I guess I just felt threatened, like I could never live up to you. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. You don't have to live up to anyone, Jenna. You're part of this family, too. We're all just doing our best. She smiled, relief flooding her face. Thank you. I'd like to start over if you'll let me. I nodded, my heart full. I'd like that, too. Sophie was the last to find me, her arms full of wildflowers she'd picked from the garden. These are for you, Grandma, she said, her voice bright. Because you're the best. I hugged her tight, my tears falling freely. Thank you, Sophie. You're my best, too. That night, as I walked home under the stars, I thought about the reunion, about the laughter and the tears, about the way my family had changed in a single evening. I realized that sometimes the truth comes out when you least expect it, and that when it does, it has the power to heal old wounds and build new bridges. I sat on the porch, the air cool and sweet, the scent of wildflowers drifting on the breeze. I thought about Tom, about the life we'd built, about the love that had carried me through every storm. I realized then that sometimes the greatest act of love is simply showing up, again and again, no matter how many times you're overlooked. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let your actions speak for themselves. If you've ever felt like your kindness was invisible, or if you want to see what happens when a woman's quiet strength finally changes everything, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, has your family ever surprised you with gratitude, or have you had to wait for your moment to be seen? I read every story, and you never know who you might help by sharing. The days after the reunion felt different. The air in the village was lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I went about my routines, watering the garden, baking bread, volunteering at the library. But everywhere I went, people stopped me to say thank you. Anna, I never knew you did so much for the family, Mrs. Novick said, handing me a basket of fresh eggs. You're the reason we all come together. Even the children seemed to sense the change. Sophie came over after school, her arms full of wildflowers, her laughter echoing through the house. Grandma, can we bake cookies? She asked, her eyes bright. I smiled, pulling out the flour and sugar. Of course, sweetheart, let's make your favorite. We spent the afternoon in the kitchen, the scent of chocolate and vanilla filling the air, the sound of Sophie's laughter warming every corner of the house. I realized then that these were the moments that mattered, the small acts of love, the quiet rituals, the bonds that held us together. But not everyone was ready to let go of old habits. Linda called a few days later, her voice hesitant. Anna, I wanted to apologize again. I didn't realize how much you did for the family. I guess I was so busy trying to make everything perfect that I forgot what really matters. I listened, my heart softening. It's all right, Linda. We all get caught up in appearances sometimes. But family is about more than parties and pictures. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. She sighed, relief in her voice. Thank you, Anna. I hope we can start fresh. I nodded, feeling a sense of peace. We already have. Mark came by one evening, bringing Sophie and a bouquet of wildflowers. Mom, I've been thinking about what happened at the reunion, he said, his voice quiet. I'm sorry for what I said. I never meant to hurt you. I guess I took you for granted. I hugged him, my eyes filling with tears. We all take each other for granted sometimes, Mark. What matters is that we find our way back. He nodded, his arms tight around me. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Mark, always. That night, as I sat on the porch, the stars bright above me, the air cool and sweet, I thought about the reunion. About the laughter and the tears, about the way my family had changed in a single evening. I realized that sometimes the truth comes out when you least expect it, and that when it does, it has the power to heal old wounds and build new bridges. I realized then that sometimes the greatest act of love is simply showing up, again and again, no matter how many times you're overlooked. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let your actions speak for themselves. As the weeks passed, the changes in my family became more real. Ruth and I started a tradition of Sunday dinners, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with Mark and Sophie, sometimes with Linda and her children. The table was always full, the conversation easy, the laughter genuine. I found myself looking forward to those evenings, to the warmth of shared meals, to the comfort of being seen. Sophie became my shadow, following me through the garden, helping me bake, curling up beside me with a book in her lap. She asked questions about Tom, about my childhood, about the family stories I'd never told before. I realized then that I was passing on more than recipes and traditions. I was passing on a sense of belonging, a sense of home. One afternoon, as we picked strawberries in the garden, Sophie looked up at me, her eyes serious. Grandma, do you ever wish you had more? More money, more clothes, a bigger house? I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Sometimes, sweetheart, but then I remember what I do have, family, friends, a home full of love. That's more than enough for me. She nodded, her face thoughtful. I think you're the richest person I know. I hugged her, my heart full. Me too, Sophie, me too. Linda and I grew closer, our old rivalry replaced by a new understanding. She started asking for my advice, inviting me to help plan family events, including me in decisions big and small. I saw the effort she made, the way she tried to make amends, the way she listened when I spoke. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Linda turned to me, her voice soft. Thank you for forgiving me, Anna. I know I haven't always been kind. I wanted to be seen, too. I squeezed her hand, my own eyes shining. We all want to be seen, Linda. We all want to matter. She smiled, relief flooding her face. I'm glad we have each other. Mark and Jenna made changes, too. They started inviting me to more family outings, asking for my opinion, making space for me in their lives. Mark apologized again, his words sincere, his actions even more so. He helped me with chores, called just to check in, made sure I knew I was loved. I realized then that sometimes, the hardest thing you can do is let people back in after they've hurt you. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is giving them a second chance. As the seasons changed, so did my family. We grew closer, stronger, more connected. The wounds of the past faded, replaced by new memories, new traditions, new hope. I realized then that healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to move forward together. And I promised myself that, whatever happened next, I would never let myself be erased. Sometimes, the people who laugh at us the loudest are the ones who need our quiet strength the most. I never imagined my own family would judge me for what I wore, or that it would take a single announcement to remind them who had been holding them together all along. But life has a way of showing us that our worth isn't measured by appearances, but by the love and resilience we bring to every table, no matter what we're wearing. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or if you've ever had to wait for your moment to be seen, I hope you know you're not alone. I know what it's like to sit in the quiet after everyone's gone, to wonder if you did enough, if you loved enough, if you mattered enough. I know what it's like to feel the ache of old wounds and the hope of new beginnings, to want to hold on and let go at the same time. But I also know that healing is possible. That courage is a choice you make every day, sometimes in small ways, sometimes in ways that change everything. I know that you can be overlooked and still be the heart of your family, that you can be pushed aside and still come back stronger, that you can be laughed at and still be the one who brings everyone together. Would you have spoken up, or would you have stayed silent for the sake of peace? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story because sometimes sharing our pain is the first step toward healing. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for listening and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, even after the deepest heartbreak, you can still choose to begin again. And if you want to see what happens when a woman finally chooses herself, or if you believe in the power of second chances, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the next story might just be the one you need.